Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. For this episode, we're looking at CGI perhaps obsolete in a world not entirely concrete, but with a message that's a real treat. That's right, we're talking Disney's Meet the Robinsons. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Knuckles.
Hello.
And Joel Killingsworth.
Hello.
So guys, as previously mentioned just a moment ago, we're talking Meet the Robinsons. But before we dive into that, maybe we're gonna it's not a spoiler, it was in the trailer. I went back and watched the trailer.
Yeah, to make
sure that this wouldn't spoil it somehow. But we're gonna talk about other time travel.
Other time
travel. Well, I don't want to say best time travel, but I guess this is favorite. Or did we all decide?
That it doesn't have to be favorite.
It is okay.
It is definitely
time travel highlight. There you go.
Because
I am under no circumstances am I positing that my selection is the best. Time travel.
Yeah,
story.
Same thing here. Like mine is definitely not the best time travel.
A story that involves time travel that you appreciate.
Yeah.
There we go.
Let's caveat.
Let's make this as generic as possible.
No impact whatsoever. All right. So on that note, I'm gonna throw this over to Joel.
Okay, fantastic. So my time travel tale actually does not include any specific time travel of a person leaving one time and entering another, but instead views time travel as being able to peer into another time.
So no physical time travel.
So is this next?
This is not next.
Oh, that was a good choice.
This is Paycheck. This starring Ben Affleck and Uma Thurman.
I don't know.
With Aaron Eckhart playing the antagonist.
Okay.
See, I'm trying to look up when it came out. It came out in 2003. And it's primarily an action adventure flick.
Okay.
And the basic thing is that Ben Affleck plays a engineer who specifically takes on less than legal jobs. The kind of the cold open is he is reverse engineering a new product that's come out with record breaking patents and is all
right.
And he reverse engineers it and designs a competing and superior product based on the work that these other people have done and gives it to the competitor.
Okay,
right?
So it's kind of shady engineering.
Right. But the twist is he always has his memories erased after doing a job. So he ends up not being a liability risk, right? Like he can't rat out his employers.
Makes sense.
He just ends up having lots of money, not remembering the months of joyless work that he put in, and just his whole life that he can remember is a vacation, right?
That's kind of fun.
I mean, okay, all right.
And so then comes along his friend from college or whatever, Aaron Eckhart, saying, look, I've got the job to end all jobs. You do this, it is much longer than your usual stint. This is like a 2-year, 3-year commitment instead of the normal couple of months deal.
Right.
But this is going to set you up for life. And then he comes out of it, doesn't remember anything, receives a package in the mail from himself with a list of like 20 different innocuous items that are in this, that can fit in this manila envelope.
Okay.
And people are trying to kill him.
Huh.
And
is what he trying to kill him?
No.
Sad.
This is not Kill Bill.
So she's the romance.
She's the romance.
I mean, shocker,
and so he's trying to figure
2003.
He's having to figure out, okay, what is it that I've been doing for the last several years? Why did I send myself these things, which he quickly learns are a laundry list of exactly the thing he needs to get out of a specific situation. And so he comes to learn that he has somehow looked forward in time.
He has not foreknowledge
and given himself exactly what he needs, even though he in his current state can remember nothing.
Interesting. Okay. Well, okay. So you did a good job because now I'm actually sort of interested to go back and watch this movie.
Yeah.
Like semi. I have to see if it's, low bar streaming somewhere and just turn it on. Lauren would be like, what's wrong with you? What are we watching?
I mean, I'm sure it's probably on Netflix, honestly.
Probably.
If it's not a movie that I've or either of us have heard about, it's probably like
Amazon Prime.
It's probably one of those that ended on like Rotten Tomatoes with like a 40% score or something.
According to IMDb, it's on Paramount Plus, and you can rent it on Amazon.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
You can rent everything.
That's not a low enough bar.
I'll spend the $3 to rent a movie
for a flyer. I did that. And it was How to Train Your Dragon. It was a great choice.
That's also a great movie.
Right? Yeah, that's not going to be the subject of my time travel discussion.
What is going to be the subject of your time travel discussion?
Well, I'm going to swing into a bit of a different field. I'm going to tread on Andrew's territory here. Turf. And we're going to do Girl Who Leapt Through Time.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
So this is like doubly yours because it's not just anime. It's also predominantly couched within slice of life.
Mm-hmm.
So basic premise is high school girl. She's not like, is she a senior? Because they are getting ready to graduate.
She's a senior.
Yeah, because they're discussing where they're going to go from there. And her with her friends and just kind of going through life and high school. And then a specific event happens where she receives an item that changes her life. And as she goes, she starts to realize she can influence or go back and change stuff without really being aware of the potential consequences of these changes. And then I'm trying to not really like give away the story because it kind of escalates from there. So it's something that starts out as just a very, like the setting, for anime, high school is really, really typical. Kind of the daily activities they go through and just sort of the scenery and everything, it is all very much so. If you didn't have any idea of the story, it would just be a perfect high school slice of life anime, and you just be like, oh, okay, it's just a movie, so it's just 2 hours.
Yeah, at most.
So it's interesting just because you have kind of this very fluffy, small scale thing that kind of escalates. It doesn't really ever escalate into a big scale, we're going to break the world or the universe or something like that. It just ultimately it comes down to she goes from kind of making frivolous decisions to making more informed decisions and kind of having to make a choice or two right at the end.
And realizing that all of the choices that she's made before this were really frivolous.
Really frivolous, yeah.
And terrible choices.
Yeah, she's kind of not it's not that she's a terrible person, it's just that she just wasn't.
She's just like any other normal high school kid that, it's like if you were given time travel, what would you do with it? Yeah. Well, I'd probably go try and change my grades or, small stuff like that, which you don't think would have a big impact on other people's daily lives. And then suddenly, because you got an A, then someone else was maybe knocked down on their ranking or whatever, which could have been a big deal for them. Then they go into a depression, like that kind of stuff. Yeah. That doesn't exactly happen in the film.
Yeah,
but
that's not a perfect. Yeah, this is as spoiler free as we can be.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's just a really nice film. Like it's not super weighty. It's not super light and floaty. It's just an easy thing to watch. Like it's not. There are a lot of.
It's got a really good emotional climax too.
There are a lot of anime films that you can watch once, and you don't want to watch them again. This is not one of those. This is just a nice kind of light and fluffy that has a good overarching theme and message and delivery, basically.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, on that note, I'm gonna pass this off to Andrew.
Yeah. So, kind of going off of young people making bad decisions whenever they get their hands on some form of time travel, I chose Steins Gate, which was it has a couple seasons in a movie, but the first season of Steins Gate, which takes place in 2010 in Tokyo, Akihabara, which is kind of like the hub of like kind of pop culture and anime. For where you can go like buy goods and electronics and whatnot. And it follows essentially a self-proclaimed mad scientist that is just, he's college age, so 19 to 20-ish. And he just kind of has a quotation marks lab. And when I say quotation marks, it's very much quotation marks. And him and his hacker buddy kind of stumble upon a way to send text messages back to the past. And whenever they kind of figure this out, they realize that they kind of figure out the limitations of how this works. And in doing so, kind of alter a lot of things that were not meant to change, where they're like, oh, I'm going to send a text message to myself to win this lottery, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And small amounts of not like, millions of dollars kind of thing, but the kind of show progresses to where, and I don't want to give away anything because there's a really big twist towards the middle of the show that really kind of like, you're kind of like going up a hill, and it's pretty slow pace for the first like 10-ish episodes, and then you are going downhill and you cannot stop until the end, and in a good way. It's just a really good show. But the time travel in it kind of escalates to where they're sending text messages back, and then they kind of find a way to send essentially brainwaves back to people, so where it's kind of more of a time leap instead of like sending a text message and then you have to hope that that you yourself, when the person you send it back to, would actually react the way that you think you need to, if that makes any sense. And the whole show takes place over basically 2 weeks in middle of summer Japan, which is super hot, cicadas everywhere.
Oh, that's the classic Japan, in animation. Summer in Japan.
But yeah, it's a really small cast of characters, only like 5 or 6 people, and just kind of a lot of the stuff that kind of happens because they're just college kids that happen to get hold of something that is clearly where if you control time travel, you control the world level technology.
Right.
And if you do choose to go watch it, just kind of curb your expectations for the first episode. The first episode is bonkers, and it will make quite literally 0 sense.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
But there is a reason for that, and if I reveal that, then
you don't want to give it away. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it has to be said, because we all kind of danced around. We picked our own things. Obviously, elephant in the room. Back to the Future exists, people. We know it. Everybody knows
it. We've never seen it before.
There's like...
That's a lie. No, we've all seen it.
We've all seen it. Yeah, stop. It's one of those things where it's like, there's no point in us pitching this or talking about this because everybody knows it.
Yeah, and that's always like, whenever you say time travel, everyone literally just gravitates towards...
going back in time.
Yeah.
No, we danced around that one.
We'll probably review it at some point. I would, at least the first one.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll go
all 3 films.
We generally have been avoiding going super deep on things unless it's just some huge demand on it. But hey, if you would like to demand that we review something, spoilersintendedpodcast.com, we have a link to our Discord, one of the best ways to interact with us. And if you would like to make a suggestion about something we should review, that is your place. So if you really want to see or hear Back to the Future, that's your moment.
Yep. And speaking of suggestions, this episode was suggested by one of our listeners, Whitney, who is a very big Disney fan. I've known her for a good portion of my life. And she specifically said Meet the Robinsons is one of her favorite films. So I'm sorry ahead of time or not. I don't know yet. So
yeah, it's dangerous to throw out your favorites out in front of us. That could be risky, but we'll find out. So on that note, we're going to move forward into a little bit of more of the meat of the episode here, kind of swing back to, again, Meet the Robinsons. So Joel, you want to give us a little synopsis?
Yes. So the film opens with a baby being left on the stoop of an orphanage, and through a quick scene change, we follow the baby, Lewis, to the age of 12, where he has become a prodigious inventor of unique gadgetry.
That never works.
That never works quite right. And he is trying to be adopted. He has an adoption interview where he kind of self-sabotages with his machine that he's trying to show off. And there's obviously a disconnect between the prospective parents' expectation of, well, we're trying to talk sports and this and that, the things that they find interesting, that they think kids find interesting, and he's just different and not what they expect. And that just goes terribly, blows up in his face, literally. And he proceeds to go about with his life kind of in despair of ever being able to be adopted.
Right.
And so he decides that he needs to find his birth mother. That is the thing that he needs. That's the only place that he thinks, in 12-year-old logic, that he's going to find acceptance. And so he decides that he's going to invent a memory scanning device. So this is the first big ask that the film makes, is that he is a genius inventor. Even though nothing works quite right, he's still a genius inventor. So just go with it.
Yes.
And
well, I mean, that's kind of one of the core principles of the film.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
But anyway, so he builds a device and he takes it to the science fair at his school. He like finishes it just in time, so he hasn't tested it at all. And he gets there, and that's where the movie goes completely sideways, because then we get thrown in another kid showing up out of nowhere, claiming to be a time cop who's hunting down a mysterious man in a bowler hat who's here to sabotage
something.
Yes.
And from there, hilarious hijinks ensue.
Emphasis on hijinks ensue. A lot of hijinks. Lots of hijinks. Okay. So on that note, let's so we're going to look at the technical score. So for this is the 4 main pillars of review that we're looking at. So the spectacle, the score, the character, the performance, and the plot. I'm crossing up the writing and there are issues there. Anyways, but those are the 4 pieces that make that up aggregated.
So spectacle, performance, score, plot.
Thank you.
For clarity's sake.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Joel, what was that score?
So for that score, we gave the film a 7 out of 10.
Okay. And that's
respectable,
actually.
That's fairly decent.
Yeah.
We typically it needs to get to an 8 before we're actually really gushing.
We're really wow.
Yeah. But this was a certainly a respectable effort, all things put together.
It did not cross the No Way Home threshold, but it's not far from it. I'm never gonna let that be.
And we also have an entertainment score.
Yes,
which is just basically what we generally just find enjoyment out of the film. Sometimes this could be higher or lower or the same.
And we specifically included this in order to be able to say, this film, technically speaking, was bad, but I just loved it.
It was great, yeah.
And so we've got this in here, and every time we harp on this could be totally different, and every time it's the same, and this time it is exactly the same. It is a 7 out of 10 for enjoyment and technical, just all together.
And that's usually it's just like a couple, tenths higher or lower, but for us just to nail that dead on, that's actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
We apparently enjoy movies in a very specific way. And it relates to how we decided we wanted to review movies.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a bold prediction here, is when we watch a movie like Top Gun, and we more than likely will review it because the new movie's coming out in sometime.
Very soon.
Supposedly. May 27th or whatever.
This is one of those movies that was delayed like 3 times, and then they just undelayed it and sped up its release.
Yeah.
Or has it already released?
Oh, time travel.
But what I'm saying is that the original movie is really not that good, but I love watching that movie.
Well, there are a lot of movies from that era
that are just not
from
good.
A technical standpoint. The plot's just not all there, but at the end of the day, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, True Lies is definitely one of those.
Yeah, that's a good one for it. Yeah, it's interesting. We've been avoiding these types of movies without realizing it.
Yeah,
we might have to make a better effort to be like,
maybe hit on some 80s action films.
Some 80s, yeah, because those are really easy to be like, well, the plot's dumb.
But anyway,
sorry.
Back to the Future with Meet the Robinsons. So we have here, I think, probably the biggest negatives on this film as far as the technical execution is concerned is that the CGI definitely is not great.
Right. So we're still in a...
To say that it aged bad is an understatement.
Yeah. Just to throw this out, this is still spoiler-free section, for not just for y'all, but also anyone listening. So it doesn't just jump straight in. But yes, it did not hold up.
Right.
Well.
And it was... released in 2007, and
there's a lot of other films that were released earlier and the same year, even by Disney, that had very good CGI.
Yeah.
I mean, we've looked at several films that are released prior to it that are, again, predominantly hand-drawn, but they still, and it may just be that element of hand-drawn animation just holds up over time, They hold up way better than this did.
Yeah, and when they did employ CGI, like it's in little bits, right?
They tried to hide it almost.
Yeah. So the biggest thing with this film, and this is actually this film really is more of a love letter to Walt Disney, and his general ideas of what the kind of future he wanted it to be, but then also just kind of how he lived his life with basically always moving forward, which is a big key component of the film for the message, and basically that failing is important and failing is okay.
It's natural. I mean,
it's natural, and you have to celebrate those failures because you learn more from being a failure or failing than succeeding.
Right.
And because of that, it's like the vision that they kind of had for this film, like just the general aesthetic for it, is very much you go to Tomorrowland in Disney Magical Kingdom, and this is what you're kind of expected to see for this film. And I do understand kind of where they were going with it for like the not plastic sheen, but that's kind of what they ended up with. And like the concept at a core level is really cool. And I wish that they either would have waited to make this film now, where they have more technology to make things a little bit more tactile feeling instead of just this, literally just plastic.
It definitely suffers from the whole CGI. Everything is plastic. Your face is plastic. The hat is plastic. The shirt is plastic. The plastic spoon is also plastic, but it's the only thing in that list that's supposed to be plastic.
Yeah.
And it does. It pulls on like the retro futurism vibes a lot,
which is cool. I like that. I like that aesthetic.
And that's a very successful style. You look at something like Fallout, right? That leans really heavily into the same type of style. Big cigar-shaped rocket ships with the big fins, and it's yellow and red. And like that works. It just doesn't quite work here, and I think a lot of it is just the technology wasn't there,
they utilized,
or the willingness to budget for it wasn't. Because there are, Pixar. Other studios put out films that are.
The Incredibles came out. Different studio, but Pixar came out with The Incredibles, which is roughly that same kind of aesthetic.
It has the same, it has the same feel.
And it's just a whole different like feel that the film has, just as, for the graphics themselves.
Right. Well, and also that's a good reference to. I think one of the things that harms this film a little bit is you have a lot of films, go back to like Shrek, right? That were put out that, is it a kid's movie? Yeah. But is it also kind of for adults?
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is very much so a kid's movie. It has a really great message and a really great theme and idea, but the execution really, really puts it in the realm of, this is a kid's movie.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, if you want a ride with a lot of laughs, this definitely has that. The humor writing was on point. Lots of great one-liners, and like the characterization of the villain is very much a humorous characterization, where he's trying to present as being this mysterious, dark, evil figure.
He's the classic Dudley Do-Right villain style look, right? Of, well, I'm gonna kidnap her and tie her to the railroad kind of thing.
He's got the
and the long
you already know
mustache.
What that looks
like. But to the point of the humor, I think the humor is like great. There are some great moments of writing and execution in there. They do kind of where it's like they know they have a really good gag, and they do the gag twice, like back to back, and we've discussed it on the show in the past about the idea of callbacks. And I don't know if that's a pre-show material and you have to pay to have heard that, or that was somewhere in a show I can't recall at the moment. But the idea of a successful callback is you have to have a little bit of a twist to it. And there also needs to be the implication is there's a passage of time. And this one, sometimes they have that gag and it's quote unquote a callback, but it's basically word for word the same thing. And it just happened. And so there's almost a moment of, did I like accidentally rewind this or something? So that threw me a couple of times.
Yeah. But like kind of like what you guys just said, the quotation marks performance, or the writing for the characters, and especially the jokes, like the script writing is honestly fantastic. And I'm sad that it was paired with a relatively dated CGI look for even the time that it came out. Because like that was more on the lines of like 1996 Toy Story.
Yeah.
God, is that how old Toy Story is?
Yeah, I think so.
Surely not. That's horrifying.
No,
because
because 98 was Toy Story 2. I know that.
That's horrifying. I'm so old.
Well, you do that,
That's
but
terrifying.
I may be wrong. It may be even earlier than that.
No, don't do that.
but yeah, it like the act and the music was. Well, I actually really enjoyed a lot of the music for the film too.
Yeah,
because it had some good, some pop culture hits in there, and then also just like the general score was really fun.
It was also heavily stylized.
Toy Story was released in 1995, November of 95.
Oof. Almost 96. Almost made it.
Almost made it. So not make me feel bad, but now I feel worse by like a month.
But yeah, like the music was really stylized as well to really fit the manic idealized futurism in the film.
Manic idealized, perfect.
No, that's actually
that's
very
a perfect description. No, I agree though. The music was great. That's when we get into where we break it down. That's a high point for me.
And some of the time travel aspects were interesting, but it's kind of one of those things where if you're used to seeing these films, you can probably already call the twist of the film almost immediately.
Like time travel tropes are very difficult to handle correctly. There's very few instances of like a technically sound time travel plot. And this is not one of those.
Well, I mean, yeah, like it just depends on how you view time travel, but once you get
but like this one contradicts itself on several points.
Yes.
So
yeah,
all the time.
We'll get into that once we move forward.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Have you seen a guy in a bowler hat sneaking around? I'm not sure what he's up to exactly, but it probably has something to do with spoilers. So if that's not something you want to hear, you'd better get out of here. Before you go, if you liked what you heard, check out our other content at spoilersintendedpodcast.com. But if you're ready to join the time cops and take on the bowler hat guy, then take a deep breath and keep moving forward.
Alrighty, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that quick little intermission, but we are back. We have moved forward into time, not back into time, and it is all spoilers all the way here. And we are going to kick this off taking a look at our individual scores for The Spectacle, and I think we gave maybe some hints of which way this is going to go. I'm going to send it over to Joel first. I'm curious.
Okay.
I am actually very curious.
I'm really curious
to hear what you.
Well, I gave Spectacle a 7.
Okay.
I obviously we already talked about the CGI, which is a heavy component of the spectacle category in an animated film.
Right.
Not being very impressive from the perspective of viewing it today, or even necessarily when it came out. But on the other hand, the things that they attempted to do with like all of the flyby vista shots to set the scene when you got into the future in the city, and then
with like all the bubbles.
And then again at the house, the villa, and then also too once they started dramatically changing the past and to affect the future, where you got to see the post-apocalyptic bowler hat world,
dystopian world.
Yeah, like all of these things, they were wonderful ideas, and from a perspective of like how they were shot, so to speak, I thought really hit home and were executed well. They just weren't really supported by the animation.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a plus for me on that side.
Yeah, I like It's one of those things where it's like being a designer, I can see where their vision was like, and I bet honestly their art boards and their storyboards for the pre-production for the movie are probably fantastic because
or like any of the concept art probably looks, it's got that Art Deco futurism to it that looks perfect.
And whenever I see that, and then I see where the movie ended up in production, it makes me feel really sad that it ended up that way, just because it could have been so much more. Where like, you'll watch, like I'll say like TV shows that are like just all CGI. Like I'll say Marvelous Miss Butterfly, fan. I don't know. Anyways,
What?
Are you talking about the Ladybug show?
Ladybug. There it is.
Yeah.
Oh,
The show is called Miraculous.
Yeah.
that's a cut I don't expect to hear on this show
And-
discussed, but all right.
yeah.
Especially not from Andrew.
No, but so like the CGI in that is basically on par with this.
Yeah, it's not good.
And
Yeah, actually, that is a very similar look.
and basically the world for Miraculous just kind of just there's no one else besides just the characters.
Mhm.
It's very empty.
It feels very empty, and because of like the color palettes and everything that they kind of chose for this, which is just as bright as possible.
Mhm.
For Meet the Robinsons, it also felt kind of the same way,
Hmm.
where there wasn't a lot of additional detail that brought you more into the world because everything was bright white, bright green, bright red.
Mhm.
Which really plays into the idealized futurism
It does.
idea is that
Mhm.
you're really trying to use these pristine, there's no dirt anywhere.
Yeah,
there's
right.
nothing is wrong. Everything is perfect.
Yeah.
And that the bright color palette really kind of visually pulls that forward.
Yeah. And that like, and whenever I see that, I just get really sad because I know what it could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And-
speaking of, what was your score?
I gave it a 5.
Okay.
But like, okay, so like the art direction is one thing, and I normally can kind of like see past a lot of that with for like my scores of like, oh, you know, like just because I don't like the style, I can at least see kind of like where they're going with it,
Mhm.
what they wanted. Honestly, what really killed me was just the actual character designs are a little grotesque.
They actually kind of would fit more in like a Tim Burton
Yeah.
a lot of times.
But what honestly probably the thing that absolutely just killed it for me was the eyes. The eyes, like whenever, in particular Wilbur, I don't know what it, maybe just because he had really round eyes.
He had a lot of screen time too.
He also had a lot of, yeah. But like whenever they're talking, their eyes are just kind of like googly eyes.
Mhm.
That like just little plastic ones that you can just kind of stick wherever you want. and they just kind of just float around. And it just, it just was really weird.
Mhm.
And that really, because it would have been like a 7 for me of, you know, if everything else was just kind of around the same lines. But
Mhm.
then like just the character designs really took me out almost immediately. And every time I've seen, like when I was doing a lot of the pre-production art and stuff for the podcast when we were doing doing the review,
Mhm.
I was looking at the character designs. I'm like, oh man, I really hope that like these look a lot better in motion, and they didn't.
Oh,
Steven?
so I'm gonna split the difference. I gave it a 6,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's just it's shocking how much the CGI did not hold up,
Mhm.
and just how brutally empty the spaces are. And I get the whole like we're going for like the clean, bright
Yeah, like as
future.
pristine as possible.
Mhm.
But at some point, and you feel bad, like at some point within a 3D space, you got to put the light somewhere else that isn't just creating a bright blue sky.
It kind of felt like every light was a fluorescent light.
Yes. And now at the end of the film, right, when you hit the dystopian Bullheart world, you actually get really interesting lighting. It's
Mhm.
just the opportunity for that anywhere else in the film is kind of gone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they do a little bit of it, like when they introduce the family and you have the mom in the spotlight with the frogs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They try to do a little bit of it there. They try to do what they could with it. But I think just ultimately the vision or the goal of this clean, bright future world, could it be there? Sure. Could 2007 CGI do it? No, it could not. At least not at that budget. It
Mhm.
suffers a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The caveats are carrots, olive branches. Those are the things you give people for peace. I would say would be the actual effect of the time travel machines when they like time travel.
Yeah, it was cool.
Pretty good. I liked it. The cloaking effects were quite good,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And I also really, I really like the design of it. You see it mostly with the time travel machine, but when they kind of do the whole spiel about all the different tests and like the pieces that are left,
Yeah.
and the various styles as they go through it, I think
Mhm.
that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish we could have seen that maybe a little more spread out, because like the time machines stand out from the rest of the stuff in the surroundings because they just look so much better because
Yeah.
there's just more to them.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and like even like I actually really like a lot of the character animation, especially for Bowler Hat Guy or Goob, just because like
spoilers.
he has the like he really does have the whoa, like
yeah.
the big
quintessential just bad like gloomy bad guy that
Mhm.
hangs out in the background and stares at you from a corner.
or like the big like he's gonna sneak walk where they do like the really high
Yeah.
knees walk. Yeah, I mean those I do think that the animators really went back and looked at, like the classic cartoon villain era.
Especially like Hanna-Barbera.
Oh yeah.
And obviously Looney Tunes and that kind of stuff. And not in a bad way. Like I like that style. I just wish that it would have been a little bit better executed.
Yeah, because that style definitely, perfectly translates. As soon as he makes an appearance, like, you know what they're going for. Like, oh, okay, I know. This is a villain.
Yep.
Perfect. Nailed it.
So
Easy.
speaking of bowler hat guy and the villain, that leads us to
performances. Yes. So we started with Joel. I'm going to let Andrew kick it off this time.
Okay, so going from a 5, you already like,
Spectacle.
man, he hates this film already. I don't even know where this wants to go. I gave it a 10.
Oh, nice.
Okay, honestly, the performance was the shining star for this film.
That's fair.
You have Adam West as a superhero pizza delivery guy.
I know. It was so
It
great.
was fantastic. Then you have the throwaway Tom Selleck cameo as his older self.
And the fact that
Tom Selleck?
And it's just a photo of Tom Selleck.
It's such a good joke.
Like, honestly, the joke writing and just the general script was just fabulous. It was so funny. And like in the very manic kind of because there was a lot of like dry humor, and then there's also just some really absurdist humor in there.
A lot of absurdist humor surrounding the family in the future.
Yeah. And whenever that is one of my favorite types of humor. So whenever I'm there, I'm just like, I grew up on the Far Side.
Okay.
That is kind of where a lot of my comedy generally comes from, and just knowledge. So whenever I see films like this that really embrace it, I was laughing the whole time.
Yeah. I like absurdist humor. I don't know if I like it in this volume or density. And that it just
it was quite dense.
They hit you with it over and over and over again. I'm going to jump in. I give performance a 7.
Okay.
And I think overall it's pretty good. And especially some of the bits that, like you said, the humor, the bits that Wilbur gets to throw out were good and well done. And I think some of the emotional moments that they got to throw, especially with Lewis and Goob or their, as he ages up, counterparts. I mean, like, it kind of was cool just to see, it's essentially he's an orphan and he gets to kind of be his own father figure.
Yeah.
Which I think that was great. Like, that was a great moment, and they did it well. I think really what harms it is just kind of the animation doesn't support it.
Yeah.
It just doesn't it's just not good enough. Like you talked about in Spectacle, the googly eyes. Like, yeah, like that was a great line. This dude is looking in 2 different directions and it is killing me. And it's some of that. And it just, Adam West is a superhero pizza guy. Sure.
How dare you even?
It's hilarious. It's just the amount of other speed quip one-line throwaway lines that it took for us to get to that point was just a little much. And like, full props to the people doing it. They sold out for it, and some of it landed and some of it just kind of didn't. So
yeah. Joel, what are your thoughts?
Well, I gave performance an 8.
Okay.
Okay. I thought it was really great. I think the standout, like we talked about, was the bowler hat guy villain performance was amazing, and it made the whole film. Without him, you don't have this movie.
No,
not at all.
Whenever he's talking to himself in the time machine, where he's like, "I don't need a chicken,"
and it's like, "Oh, I know. I'll turn him into a duck. It'll be so evil." But wait, I don't actually know how to do that, and I don't really need a duck. And it's so good.
This
like,
plan
it just
is so much more difficult than I
I
expected.
know. It's so good. And like right up there with him, I think is Wilbur, the character, just putting out okay, I'm 13 and I am trying so hard to be an adult. And
so hard.
I have made a really big mistake, but as long as I fix it before anyone notices, then it's going to be okay. And
which is exactly what a 13-year-old
I know,
would
right?
do.
And so like he is just lying every other sentence and trying to control information and manipulate everything in the manner of a 13-year-old. And it's such fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, I really liked when our villain goes back in time and he gets to talk to himself and he's like, no, hold on to that.
Yeah.
Allow
the hate to fester.
I mean, like, it's great and all. And you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to meet quota for this episode. But, like, Kylo Ren could have taken some lessons here. Could have learned a few things about how to actually sound like you're telling someone to hold on to their emotions or let go of it, but just in general. Could have learned some things.
All right, there you go.
I said
So
it.
if he had watched this film, so this is a
Disney film.
This is
a Disney film too, technically.
tacit recommendation that if you are an emo megalomaniac in the future controlling a galactic spanning pseudo empire, watch this film.
Yeah, it
Will
would
they
help.
even have Meet the Robinsons in Star Wars?
We'll never know.
Or
Disney will tell us and we don't
ago
want
in
to
the
know.
galaxy far, far away.
time
travel.
Yeah,
Ah,
that's the answer.
there it is.
That's
Also,
the answer.
The Force as a magic system could also come through. You never know.
All right. Well, let's talk about
The score.
the score. One of the
score.
highlights of this film and Star Wars.
The score of the score. Yeah. Oh,
Oh, yes.
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 That is a non-controversial statement. I accept.
John
There you go.
Williams is a master.
There
He
you
did,
go.
he did not do
He
this
did not do
score,
the
but
So this score is Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna jump in.
Sure.
I give it an 8
Mhm.
because I think we've had this before, and I can't recall what movie it was right offhand. Oh no, Treasure Planet.
Yeah.
where we had the montage and it was Goo Goo Dolls. And it
Mhm.
kind of threw y'all off a little
Mhm.
bit. For me, like that mid 2000s, and we get Rob Thomas
Mhm.
with
All American Rejects.
and well, I'm
Yep.
getting there. But we get Rob Thomas and we get All American Rejects. Like that's kind of that quintessential mid to late 2000s feel.
Mhm.
Really, it's a mid 2000s feel kind of stretched into the late 2000s because I think you're already at the point where
Well,
Matchbox 20 is broken up and it's just Rob Thomas. So like,
Yep.
we're already past that point.
And it's interesting that you bring up that comparison because when I was watching it, I was like, So I actually didn't like when the Goo Goo Dolls were used for this in Treasure Planet.
right?
But I'm into this. And so like,
well,
the difference was really interesting.
It makes a difference just because, it's like, I like All American Rejects, so I gave it a higher score than the Goo Goo Dolls. And
that's fair too.
Well, and this is definitely like the mid 2000s were just such a weird time because you had like the Vindicated Dashboard Confessional music video for Spider-Man 2 when it came out, which is just like the most like emo existing. And I like the song and I like Dashboard Confessional, but man, it was just like so. It's just the 2000s.
Yeah.
It's just its own little time capsule, and every once in a while something comes back that reminds me of it. And
most of the time it's kind of cringe.
There's a lot of cringe in this case, though. It lands properly.
Yeah.
It
fits. It does. Yeah.
The All American Rejects. This future is now.
Yes.
I think that hits like that's exactly what's going on.
Yes.
And it's kind of its own. We got away from like a Disney-fied, Tomorrowland or It's a Small World, and we get our own thing, and if it works, right?
Yeah.
It just works, and it's really funny to say that amidst all the other pieces of actual score, which are much more traditional, and they also work really well with what's going on. So
the score of the film was honestly great. I gave it an 8.
Okay. Yeah.
And basically for the same reasons, I thought all the insert songs, which are, non-composed songs for the film specifically, were really good. And then the actual score of the OST was very like when like you knew when it was going to be an emotional moment, and it definitely helped elevate it from what it already was, probably because the CGI just wasn't doing enough for like to help you with that.
Ideally, all of those things are helping you.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's kind of how our rubric works.
Yeah.
Is that like if you have one part that doesn't do so good, you can have something else that elevates it up.
Yeah.
Joel?
So I think that you two being the same is just terrible. We really need to have more diversity. So I also gave it an 8.
This is the only thing so far where we have all agreed.
Right. And, I second everything that you've said. I think that the stylization of the original soundtrack really highlights the themes of the idealized futuristic setting. And so that was really great. I think the only thing that I really knock it on is the fact that regardless of the level of action going on in the scene, the soundtrack was always dialed to 11. So there was like slow moments where they were just like climbing into a cockpit, and you've got dun 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 dun.
I mean, that also kind of fits though for this again the setting where it's the big bold, kind of that brassy feel of this is what the future will be, kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
But no, I can see it too, where it's just like, okay, calm down, people.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely ADHD, the film.
Holy cow, was it ever? So,
Yeah,
are
talking about that.
we ready to go into the true ADHD? Let's talk about the plot. So this is going to be the score where we talk about the fact this is emphatically a kids movie. I'm gonna take first score. I'm not gonna take many points, but I give it a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And my very first line was, "Oh no, time travel," because I actually had only vaguely recalled when this movie came out, and only knew one scene, which was the "Why aren't you fetching the boy?" The T-Rex.
Mm-hmm.
Offhand.
My arms are too strong.
Yeah.
So I didn't have much familiarity. I didn't realize it was actually going to be a time travel movie because
Mhm.
I hadn't seen the trailer in
I
however
like
long.
because I didn't know really anything about the film, and I just assumed that they just had a dinosaur
Mhm.
just as a pet.
Yeah, I was ready because
Because I was like, everyone looks really weird. It's probably in the future. I don't know.
there's a
Yeah.
flying saucer. Why wouldn't they have a dinosaur?
Why wouldn't they have a
Right?
dinosaur?
Yeah.
Those are the same thing.
Well, time travel. Why wouldn't you have a dinosaur?
I mean, you know that the Flintstones and Jetsons take place in the same universe.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Anyways,
And the same timeline.
And the same, like they're neighbors. Like that's just
There was a crossover episode of Hanna-Barbera
yes.
where there was the Flintstones and Jetsons, and it is a confirmed fact that they take place in the same universe, in the same timeline.
okay. That's fine.
You're welcome.
That's fine.
Let's back out of Hanna-Barbera conspiracies and get back to the plot of Meet the Robinsons. It's very ADHD. It's just kind of all over the place at any given moment.
Well, a lot like the individual scenes are all over the place.
Yeah.
The overarching story is not.
I don't know if I necessarily, just because of time travel jumping into the middle of it all.
Mhm.
Like the individual scenes are manic and ADHD, right? The overarching story makes sense for the most part. It
Mhm.
holds up fairly well. But like there's a more discrete chunk somewhere in between that where there are potentials for problems.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime that you have any kind of time travel, there's
Where
just-
you can insert individuals into
right?
a
Or,
story.
or you can even just have one individual just declare, well, I'm not going to make you. And now that just stopped everything.
So that was probably the single biggest problem, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how the climax was resolved. Is Lewis tracks down the bowler hat, looks in its one little red optic eye, and says, "I will never make you." And that's the thing that stops it.
Yeah.
But if you think about it logically, him resolving to never make the thing could work, but it does not have to know that it will never be made for it to not be made. Like he could just be like, you know what? Making that's a terrible idea. Make a note, never make this thing. The whole thing's gone. Like it's
doesn't
already
work.
it's
Yeah.
already resolved.
Yeah.
Well, and the way that they already kind of pushed a lot of the actual time travel elements of how everything happens, it is led to believe that that is what actually happened because he made time travel and then basically goes through, and all the events that you're seeing are the actual events that need to take place for him to invent things to meet his foster parents and become, the great inventor that he's supposed to be.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and take the reins here for
Go
a
for it.
second.
Yeah.
I gave the plot a 5.
Okay.
Am
Am I going to be the kindest one here?
maybe. Oh, we'll see. But to your point, when you're writing a time travel story, you need to pick a lane.
Yeah.
Either
Yes.
you can affect change to
Mhm.
the timeline,
Or you can't.
or you cannot.
Mhm.
Either everything you're about to do was always there, or you're dealing with either branching timelines or like self-correcting timelines, but regardless, it has an effect. And in this case, we were shown that it's both.
Yeah.
Because the opening scene, there are details that occur in the opening scene with Lewis being left on the stoop that we learn later that Lewis was the one that did, older Lewis.
Mhm.
He's the one that actually knocked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we clearly have the knock in the opening scene of the
Yeah.
film. So like there was a knock the first time around, and then he's the one that did it. So in that instance, what he went back in time and did, he always went back in time and did.
Yeah.
But later on, when you're going through, well, we're changing the timeline, see what happens, changing the timeline, see what happens. like that. Those two things are mutually exclusive.
Right. Like
well, and then whenever he, sorry,
Yeah.
and then whenever he just says, well, I'm not going to invent you, you've already been invented, meaning that like this has already happened kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you're just breaking your rule.
Right. So now we're dealing with, okay, so we're actually just like branching off into an alternate dimension timeline kind of
Right.
thing,
Yeah.
which it's just all over the place. Like you've got to pick a time travel theory and stick with it. Make your magic system internally consistent.
So the one thing I really like about Steins Gate, because I talked about it earlier and it's just on my mind, is whenever something is changed via timeline, like they change something in the past to change something in the future, they actually move to completely different timelines, basically, to where they're like
the sacred timeline.
Everything kind of exists in its own line, and the only thing that changes is basically the person's memories that goes to a different world line, essentially.
Okay.
So there's no like you can't meet yourself in the past kind of thing because you just already. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, there's the other issue of, well, bowler hat guy goes back into the past, right, and ruins the invention that set Lewis off on his path, and then they go to be an inventor, and they go to the future, and the future is unchanged.
Yep,
it just is what it is until we hit the point of, well, the failure finally happens, and now bowler hat can take over, and then he looks bowler hat in the eye and is like, well, I'm never going to invent you, and bowler hat in a realistic timeline is probably like, you're right, you're not, because I'm about to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, because these things, they don't seem to connect or work with one another, where we've already ruined the past, which should influence the future, but the future has been uninfluenced yet. So it's just this weird melding of two typical concepts.
Now, the sequence where the bowler hat guy goes back in time and we have this whole, emotional moment of Wilbur being sucked into the time vortex or whatever, and then it's just everything's dark.
Yeah.
And because he's inside the garage, and then he finds a little bit of light, and then he sees the memory machine that the bowler hat has gleefully placed there for him. And he sees the memories of what has occurred in this alternate timeline. Like that whole sequence is really cool.
Yeah.
Because you're using his environment to obfuscate what just occurred. But it doesn't make any sense.
Well, yeah, and it's definitely one of those things too where I gave it a 6 for plot, but we've kind of beaten up a lot of the
time travel
things. But the one thing that we kind of talked about at the beginning before spoilers was just the message of the film.
Yeah.
Yes.
And which is honestly fantastic. Being I'll say a creator just as a loose term. I do graphic design. It's not really create. I'm creative. And it's really important to understand early on when you are a kid or just even as an adult, that it is okay to make mistakes and it is okay to fail at specific tasks, because whenever you fail, you learn a whole lot more than when it does work. Because like when you are troubleshooting something on for a computer, you need to find the things that replicate the problem. So then you can say, well, that doesn't work, so let's try it this way. Well, that doesn't work, let's try it this way. And then until you get it to work, and if it works the first time, you have no information to base it off of, because you're like, well, was that just dumb luck? And you it is so important, and it's a thing that a lot of kids need to learn, but a lot of adults need to learn it too.
Yeah, and that's I was probably going to keep most of that in my entertainment, but we're there. So
well, it's still part of the plot.
It is part of the plot. It is a core element of the whole film as a whole. And I like that you highlight the idea that kids need to hear it, but adults do too, because there are too many adults who have reached whatever point they are in their life who didn't hear this early enough, right? There are a lot of movies that come out that have a specific target audience, and they may or may not have a great message for that target audience, and it may miss elsewhere, right? The message in this is a universal. Everybody can take something away from this.
Yeah.
Failing at something is not. It can be a setback. It can be frustrating. It can be whatever else. It is still not necessarily a bad thing. It is generally speaking a good, especially in a process where you are trying to improve something or create something or whatever. It is generally speaking a good thing.
Yeah.
There's a mantra that you will hear nowadays with entrepreneurs of fail fast, right?
Mhm.
Well, we know that when we are attempting something, it's not so much that we're guaranteed the first time we do it, it's going to work, because that is an aberration. That is not how life works
That's
most of the time. So the real answer is get a test, get an example out there quickly so that it can fail and you can find where the problems are and then build from there. And that's super, super important for people across the spectrum of age ranges to understand.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Soapbox off. Joel's just going to
No,
nod
it's
at
good.
me.
It's
There we
good.
go. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have anything else to really say about the plot. I mean, it was kind of all over the place for internal logic of how their time travel specifically works. The rest of the film, like, I liked, we've already kind of gone over it. I liked all of the people that were there. They were fun to watch and listen to. Unfortunately, not really. Well, not fun to watch. They're fun to listen to. But we should probably just move on to entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, the maybe one other, I don't want to call it a criticism, but it can be a good thing, I guess, with plot, is that it was reasonably predictable. I had a pretty good idea. Oh, this is who the villain actually is. Because we introduced time travel. We have an idea that these people are someone in the past aged up. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of it was, there's some satisfaction in it, right? Of when you take Lewis back to his present in the past, or however you want to define it, from whatever frame of reference you want. And he goes back to the science fair, and then you have all these introductions of people who are going to be figures in his life that he's learned about. Like, that is a good and satisfying emotional cycle or circle or conclusion that we get, where, okay, cool, we get to see all these pieces, both where they were in the future, how they've developed out, and then you immediately get to see him hit all these pieces in his past, or however, whatever you want to look at it, and you get that kind of closure of that loop immediately off. And because you can already kind of feel, because again, there's no guarantees in future. When he goes back to the past, we don't know how this works. He could make a mistake right now, and that future's never going to happen. But they immediately put the pieces down and say, well, he's seeing these pieces now. So that's always good. Nice to see. Okay, anyways, I got that on my system. Entertainment score. What we got?
I gave it a 6. And honestly, like, I would watch the film again, but someone else would have to put it on.
Okay. So it doesn't meet that 8 threshold of self-motivated rewatching.
Correct. But if we were at someone's house and they're like, "Hey, we're going to watch Meet the Robinsons," sure, why not?
So basically, the next time you're over at Whitney's,
probably but it's definitely one of those movies where the only thing holding it back. I mean, I can ignore plot elements of just internal logic for time travel. Like that is something that I am very particular about. Most people aren't. They don't care. But I am particular about CGI and the way characters are designed, the way
animation,
they look and they animate. And unfortunately, that is probably the biggest holdback for me.
Okay. Well, I have a slightly lower threshold of rewatch of Andrew, from an 8 to a 7, right? We've had this discussion, and I also gave it a 6. So it comes in just under the bar. It's not a unentertaining film. It's just, it is a little too manic for me. I love, again, we talked about the villain and some of the gags, some of the humor was really good. I just don't know if I want to wade through everything else to get to those pieces, or if I just go to YouTube and watch, a 2-minute clip here and laugh
of him, talking about the duck.
Why aren't you seizing the boy? Yeah. And I get my laugh and I'll move on. It's just really good message. It's just a little too fractured, a little too manic, a little too ADHD at the end of the day for me to truly be entertained, and for them to not just lose me as there's just violent shift, violent twist, violent look here, look there, go here, go there. It's just, well, you lost me now. So Joel?
All right. Well, I'm going to completely flip this on its head. I gave it a 9.
Ooh,
I absolutely
you actually took the 6 and turned it upside down.
I did. I absolutely adore this film. All of the problems aside, the message is fantastic. And the theme of an orphan who has no people, finding people is, that's an easy win, right? That's absolutely. Just pull on those heartstrings. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And the humor on this film is absolutely fantastic. Like it's just beat after beat after beat after beat.
Mhm.
You're just laughing all over the place. And so for me, that was at least my experience. So
This is a subjective score.
it is. So for me, those things carry the enjoyment of the film to a really high bar.
Well, that's totally valid. I mean, again, the humor is great. The writing is good. The delivery is usually pretty great. I don't want to say this out loud, but hey, Disney, you want to make a remake?
They do like doing those.
It doesn't need much. Not live action. Stop. It doesn't need much work, but just maybe a little love, little care.
Yeah, I mean, if they chose to remake Meet the Robinsons, I would absolutely go see it, especially if it had the similar writing style and everything paired with it.
The plot needs a little love,
Tidying up.
Yeah, but the actual script, the lines, no, don't touch, don't mess that up.
Give me just an updated updated graphics like they did with Cats.
No, whoa, stop.
What?
That is not me comparing the movie to Cats. Cats is an objectively terrible film.
Again, but the updated graphics in Cats are horrific.
No, but what I'm saying is that they have the ability to do this.
They have the ability to ruin it even more. Yes, I won't argue
The
with
scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think whether or not they should.
Man, of all the comparisons you could use.
No, that is the only comparison because that's the only film that I know of that had an actual graphical update in its actual performance block.
Oh, okay. So you mean patch the film?
Yeah, patch. Yeah, that's what I'm
okay.
saying.
Oh,
my
got it.
gosh,
Okay.
We were all on remake territory, not on patching.
No.
So
I'm saying
now I
they
get you.
have the ability
I get
to
you.
literally just have the film. And
I
then
get
just
you. This is
update
the
graphics.
latest patch ever.
Yeah.
Meet the Robinsons
No,
2.0.
no. Star Wars is probably the latest patch ever. There you go.
Yeah. Because what that was
special edition.
Oh.
Yeah, special edition 1996.
See,
And then Disney Plus edition.
I actually really dislike that. We should make that a topic somehow at some point. I actually really dislike that practice. I would really prefer
Yeah, everyone does.
that you would just don't patch Meet the Robinsons, Disney. Don't do a live action remake either. Stop. just
That should theoretically solve the googly eyes issue.
theoretically, yes.
Wilbur's actor, they just take googly eyes to his face.
It's his disguise for going back in time.
He does the quick, whips the head around. It's
No one will know who I am wearing these.
I can't let him recognize me. Oh gosh.
Oh man, that would be just nightmare fuel.
Like Cats.
It would be Tom Holland playing him too.
Oh no, it would. Oh gosh, you're not wrong. Quick, throw the 25-year out there. Be a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
We know you can do it. Pull him right off the set of Uncharted 2 where he's trying to pretend he's 40. Okay, well, on that note, that sounds like all the time we have for this episode. So until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And as always, every spoiler was intended. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.